Today I'm speaking with Dr. Joel Haber, who is a clinical psychologist and nationally recognized parenting expert who has dedicated more than 20 years to the prevention of abusive behaviors in children and adults. Dr. Haber is the author of Bullyproof Your Child and the Resilience Formula. Dr. Haber, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
What made you want to help kids who were bullying victims?
Well, a long time ago, I actually was doing work on domestic violence, and I noticed when I was working training medical professionals in domestic violence that families in those situations produce kids sometimes that were either victims or bullies. And I realized then that the power dynamics were creating, complications for children. And I thought, rather than just work with the adults, maybe I'd go back and retrain and work with kids to prevent some of these problems. So I did 10 years, I volunteered time in a children's hospital to kind of retool myself, and decided to focus on violence that happens to kids. And bullying is very similar to these kind of power dynamic problems.
Okay. Can you explain the definition of bullying?
Sure. The definition is probably one of the hardest things for parents to really get, in that, because a lot of bullying is being used now so often that people are confused by what it means, but it's really about intention. When one or a group of kids intentionally use their power to make another kid feel diminished and less powerful than them, but intention has to be there. It actually has to happen more than once, so there's an ongoing pattern. And it has to be really clear that there's an abuse of power by one kid or a group of kids against another.
Okay. Now, most people think that bullying is only physical, but really it doesn't have to be physical at all, does it?
Yeah, in the old days when I was growing up, physical was the only way we knew bullying to be, but that's actually the least problematic kind now. Because bullying happens if it's physical, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the psychological effects of other kinds of bullying, like verbal bullying, when kids taunt each other in ways that really make kids feel awful inside and diminish their self-esteem, or relational bullying, where kids use exclusion to hurt other kids' relationships, is much more painful even than physical.
Okay. And who are these kids that are bullies, and why are they doing it?
The old view was that these bullying kids were kind of these big, insecure, inadequate kids who would use their strength to kind of make themselves feel more adequate by bullying kids who were less strong. But that's not really who it is anymore. There's still some of those kids in some of those situations, but the real tough bullying kids right now, the kids who get away with the most, are the ones we worry about and the ones we focus on. And those kids fit a different profile. Sometimes those kids have these traits. They're popular, they look like leaders, they're smart, they have friends, they have confidence, and they look like the kid we all want to have. So then we get stuck because we're thinking, why would that kid want to do the bad stuff? The problem is those kids do it because they get away with it, and their peers support them. And sometimes adults do too, because they don't realize they're doing bullying behaviors. So it's a continual cycle. And that builds those kids' ability to use their power in inappropriate ways. But those kids look like leaders. And the issue is that if those kids are leaders, they're not using their empathy the way they need to. And we can turn those kids around at young ages sometimes if we really work on empathy building and having them understand that they can use leadership skills to get social connectedness, not bullying behavior.
Okay, very good, very good. And what is the long-term consequence of bullying?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's actually some new data out to support that long-term bullying, or kids who are bullying frequently, have a lot more psychiatric issues than we ever thought before. They have a lot more anxiety problems, depression problems, school avoidance, issues in their social relationships. So even if bullying was, for a period of time, it can make kids so much more anxious to take risk in social situations. Some kids don't have this, the skills or the abilities to bounce back from that, and it can make them less comfortable in situations where there are other kids, which gives them more of a more of a leaning towards these kind of psychiatric issues that we're seeing now. Like 20% of kids now in the country have mental health disorders, But we expect in the next 10 years or so that number could grow to 50%. It's just really crazy. Not from bullying alone, but because the skill sets needed that kids really do need to adapt are not really being helped out by parents too. We're not fostering our kids to have the resilience they need to overcome these issues.
Okay. And what role does self-esteem or lack of self-esteem play in somebody being bullied?
Yeah, I think that kids who are high in self-esteem, usually they have confidence and the skill set they need to kind of sometimes push a bully back, laugh with the bully, use humor, not react to it so strongly, because they kind of know like it's a game. Kids who don't have a lot of self-esteem sometimes are more vulnerable, and when they experience it, they're more sensitive to it. And if they're more sensitive, they react in a way that actually might foster more bullying because they show that they're reactive or they're emotional and they're upset, which gives the bullying kid more fuel to do more of it because they may get other kids to rally behind them.
Can you walk us through steps that parents can take to bully proof their kids?
Sure. Well, I wrote a whole book on this, so we'll do this really briefly. I guess let me pick out some of the most important things. One of the most important things is for a parent is that if you hear that your child is bullied, or if your kid is avoiding school or something's going on, you want to keep your cool. You don't want to overreact, blow your cork, get really angry if you hear this is happening, because all that's going to do is scare your kid. So you want to say, look, I've noticed you've been feeling bad. You haven't been doing the social stuff you've been doing. Is there something going on in school? Are you having any problems with kids? Or any kids teasing you or making you feel bad or leaving you out? And you can say, look, that we know that happens. It's okay. Let's just talk about it. Get on your child's level. Try to talk to them about it and listen. And empathize. Try to say to them things like, oh, that happened? You know what? Wow, when I was a kid, I can relate to that. So your child doesn't feel alone. Let them know that this is okay. And then you say to them, depending on their age, if they're able to try to work out a plan with you, hey, so how do you want to deal with this? Do you think that's something we could try tomorrow? Do you want to try to role play some things? Do you want to kind of like talk through a strategy? Or do you want to just go in and see how it goes tomorrow? Because if you do that, it gives your kids control back. We want our kids to have control. If we just get emotional and angry and out of control and say, I'm going to call the school, I'm going to call the principal, I'm going to call that kid's parent, you're going to basically freak your kid out. Not a good reaction. So we want to try to let kids find their own solutions, if possible, first. And even if they don't come up with the right solution the first time, second time, third time, it's still good to let them try, because if they can come up with their own, that's the home run, because it builds their own skill set then. It's always good, though, if you can, if this is happening in school, to call the school confidentially, let the teacher or principal know what's happening so they can observe from a distance to make sure nothing escalates, especially if you can get the details on what happened in school.
Very good. Very good. I really appreciate that. And I really like the first thing you said about the parents not overreacting or getting really emotional about it. I can see how that can turn the situation upside down.
It does. It makes it, seriously, that's the fork in the road. If you get crazy about it, they will get worse. It's just how it goes.
Exactly. So it would just make the situation worse, definitely. Definitely. What kind of trainings do you have for parents?
Yeah, well, first off, I am a kind of a coach. They call me the bully coach. What that means is that I do a lot of Skype sessions with parents, right? It's educational, it's not therapy, it's more kind of coaching. So parents call me all the time and we work out session times to do coaching for their kids. Sometimes parents need coaching on how to talk to their kids. Sometimes parents need coaching on how to handle the school or how to handle their child if their child's in a bad situation. I kind of been doing this for 20 years. I've seen almost every kind of bullying case I think that is out there because I'm also doing this in lots of different areas. So if you have a specific question or problem and need time that way, I do offer those kind of services on my website. Secondly, my book, Bully Proof Your Child for Life, Protect Your Child from Teasing, Taunting, and Bullying for Good, is a great resource. You can find it on Amazon. It's relatively inexpensive, and it gives you tons of tips on how to help your child manage bullying situations. I also have a website, respectyou, the letter u.com. www.respect, the letter u.com, which I have a blog. I have ongoing information. I put on my speaking engagements and those things on there so people can get a sense if I'm in their area around the country to come and see if they want to actually meet me in person. But I also answer tons of questions a week, even through email at joel@respectu.com. And if there's something I can answer quickly, I'll do that. But usually, parents who write me are emotional because they have a situation that they need more help with. And sometimes it can be handled easily by going to the school if you know how to handle it. But if you need more, I obviously can do that online with you.
And what are parents saying after they get your coaching? What kind of feedback? What kind of feedback are you getting?
Well, I have great feedback, thank goodness. I mean, people have, I guess I've been continuing because I get really good feedback in the time that I do the coaching to give parents specific skill sets and deal with their specific problem. Because different bullying scenarios, different kind of skills, depending on who you're going to approach, how to talk to the school, other parents, kids, whomever. So the goal is when parents get that information, they get a concrete set of answers that make them feel back in control. That's always the goal.
Very good. Now, you said on your website that you talk about your speaking engagements. How often do you speak? Is it once a month, or how often?
It really varies. Depending on the season, there are times I speak twice a week. There are times I do more individual coaching. In the summer, I speak a ton more because I'm at summer camps doing staff training. So it's really variable. So just keep checking because I'm always adding new things. I used to do a lot more speaking and traveling. With my own kids now and work in my own office, I try to limit that somewhat, but I'll try to do the big national kind of talks if I can.
Okay, very good. You mentioned your website, Respect You. What is it? Any other websites that we can go to learn more about you?
Well, I actually, I've just written a new book called The Resilience Formula. I think you mentioned that earlier, where I'm actually spending much more time on broader parenting issues now, talking about how to build resilient kids. Because the problem is a lot of our parenting and over-parenting, that helicopter generation we call it, or what we call cockpit parenting, has kind of made kids more reliant on parents to handle their own issues. We're trying to get kids back to handling their own problems and build skill sets so they can become independent adults. So I'm being called to do that a lot these days, in addition to the bullying work. And that stuff can be found also, that material can be found on my website too, with my book offering The Resilience Formula.
Okay. What age groups do you work with?
Mm-hmm. I used to work with middle school and high school kids, primarily with bullying. But the truth is that bullying starts so early in life that I now do a lot of work with preschools. I do tons of preschool talks. I do writing for preschools. My articles appearing in magazines. I've been doing a lot of media stuff too. So I start working with young kids aged 3 and 4 and going through now. It's not just even high school. I'm working with colleges, and I'm also doing it now in the workplace because bullying issues continue all the way through adulthood.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's really true. Sad, but true.
It's true. Well, Dr. Haber, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. I really appreciate what you're doing to help people who've been victims of bullying. Thank you very much.
I so appreciate the time. Thank you.